October 8th through the 10th, 1871. The Great Chicago Fire destroys more than 3 square miles, kills 300 people, and leaves more than 100,000 residents homeless. December the 1st, 1958. One hellacious fire in Chicago at Our Lady of the Angels School at 909 North Averse Avenue kills 92 young students and 3 teachers. April the 3rd, 1979. Jane Byrne is elected mayor of Chicago. The first mayor of Chicago who happens to be a woman. Byrne carried 82% of the vote during the election. During her first 6 months as mayor, Byrne secures federal funds of $1 billion for Chicago transportation projects. However, President Jimmy Carter disapproves of the slow Chicago public school desegregation efforts. Consequently, the White House denies the Chicago public school system funds of $4 million. Also, one routine audit of Chicago public school system budget books reveals big trouble. Auditors estimate the school financial system is in deficit by an amount of up to $700 million. Promptly, the Chicago public school system bond rating falls, and by law, the system becomes ineligible for a bank loan. During the same period, Chicago Transit Authority workers do not receive a pay increase already approved. December 17th, 1979, Chicago Transit Authority workers go on strike. But not for long. Judge Daniel J. O'Brien, Jr. orders CTA officials to honor pay increases retroactively. Then he orders the strike to end. CTA workers go back to work December the 20th, 1979. The following day, December 21st, 1979, for the first time since the Great Depression, Chicago public school teachers do not receive a paycheck. Chicago teachers don't get paid over 2 more paydays. February the 3rd, 1980. Finally, Chicago teachers receive a paycheck. But they go on strike anyway, because the Chicago Teachers Union fears so many of its members will lose their jobs to help the Chicago public school system balance its books. And so, the Teachers Union ignores the return to work order issued by Judge Richard Curry. Illinois law confers the bulk of public school fiscal management responsibility upon the governor and the Illinois General Assembly, that is to say, the state legislature in Springfield, Illinois. Nevertheless, Mayor Byrne believes she is obligated to assist Governor James R. Thompson and the legislature as they tackle public school financial woes. February 10th, 1980. The strike ends after Mayor Byrne manages marathon negotiations in Chicago City Hall, which stretch over 15 straight hours. One complicated but effective mix of advanced state aid, state purchase of city bonds, reluctant compromises related to job issues, and state legislature approval to raise real estate taxes ends the ordeal. After the teacher strike ends, another public employee labor dispute erupts. Previous contracts between the City of Chicago and the Chicago Firefighters Union had been consummated through verbal methods, often called a handshake agreement. An agreement often concluded behind closed doors, usually tied to some sort of political leverage, which Chicagoans call clout. However, especially since the death of Mayor Richard J. Daley during December 1976, Chicago customs begin to change. As a new generation of city politicos rise to authority, the Chicago Firefighters Union begins to favor a written contract tied to standards for the entire department instead of clout. Mayor Byrne attempts to convince the Chicago Firefighters Union she is faithfully committed to their desire for a written contract to include conventional pay adjustments and other benefits. To be sure, before moving forward with a plan to implement a written contract, Mayor Byrne indicates she wants to examine the findings of a special committee report. However, union leaders suspect union-busting persons are filtering through Chicago City Hall, and they are determined to foil Mayor Byrne. And Chicago Firefighters Union leaders begin to doubt whether Mayor Byrne could uphold support for a written contract and promote approval of the contract by Chicago City Council. Chicago Firefighters Union President Frank Muscare proclaims,
"Good faith can only postpone a strike. It takes a written contract to stop a strike." Chicago Firefighters Union President Frank Muscare.
Union chatter about a possible strike does not please Mayor Byrne.
I refuse to play Russian roulette with the safety of Chicago citizens by granting Chicago firemen the right to strike. Mayor Jane Byrne.
As the calendar moves closer to Valentine's Day, February the 14th, 1980, Chicago Firefighters Union President Frank Muscare says,
"So, is that the Valentine message from Jane Byrne? Shall we send her a Valentine too? I will tell her we ain't never gonna be sweethearts. As far as I am concerned, we have not negotiated anything substantial. So definitely there will be a fireman's strike." Frank Muscare.
Just after midnight, February 14th, 1980, Valentine's Day. Out of 120 firehouse stations in Chicago, more than 4,000 firefighters decide to abandon their stations. The Firefighters Union telephone hotline broadcasts,
"Happy Valentine's Day, Mayor Byrne. We are on strike."
Mayor Byrne assigned Chicago police to guard firehouses, hydrants, and call boxes around the clock. Also, the mayor opened city offices 24 hours a day to help provide people with emergency care services. And the mayor releases telegrams to all the firefighter strikers to let them know the city plans to press charges against them.
Any firefighter who doesn't report to work will never again work for the city of Chicago. Our lists are jammed with Chicago men eagerly seeking jobs in Chicago as firemen. The city is in no way powerless. We are going to run the city and run it well. Mayor Jane Byrne.
It is clearly an illegal strike. I order all firemen to return to work. The men of the Chicago Fire Department took an oath of office to protect the lives of citizens. I expect them to obey the court order and return to work. The strikers are playing with people's lives. It is not legal, nor is it moral. Any picketing striker who witnesses a blaze and refuses to fight it, my office will bring criminal charges. Nevertheless, several Chicago Emergency Medical Service paramedics joined the strike too. According to a public opinion poll published in the Chicago Tribune, more than 70% of Chicagoans oppose the strike. Also, the Tribune editorial describes the union action more desertion than a strike. The strike, day one. One senior man, reportedly, is killed by a house fire in Chicago on 51st Street.
It doesn't change a thing. Chicago Firefighters Union, President Frank Muscati.
Revised reports indicate the senior man was injured, not killed. He was rescued by one firefighter not participating in the strike. February the 15th, 1980. Chicago Clark Street resident, Mrs. Humeracinda Rodriguez, 77, dies soon after she falls and bumps her head against bedroom furniture. Relatives agree Rodriguez would have lived if the Chicago Fire Department had sent an ambulance to her home as requested. The strike continues. February the 18th, 1980. Judge Heckinger fines the Firefighters Union $40,000.
We are not going to pay. We might as well go to jail now. I will go to jail if necessary. Frank Muscati.
Meanwhile, 75 non-striking firefighters douse a blaze at the Chicago Carlisle Hotel along South Michigan Avenue. 5 striking firefighters join the non-strikers to extinguish the blaze. After the fire goes out, the striking firefighters return to their picket lines, and Chicago officials order an arson investigation at the hotel.
My name is Lauren Howard. February 21st, 1980, I become the first female recruit eligible to join the Chicago Fire Department. I do not endorse the strike. I don't oppose it either.
Several striking firefighters deny some of their numbers are roaming through Chicago streets as goon squads to harass non-strikers and city officials. February 22nd, 1980. There is a fire at 648 North Ridgeway Avenue near the Chicago Engine Company 85 firehouse. Several striking firefighters near Ridgeway Avenue leave their picket line. They race to Firehouse 85 to gather firefighting gear. However, they discover Firehouse 85 is closed because of the strike. Non-striking firefighters assemble quickly at the Engine Company 68 firehouse to haul firefighting apparatus to the Ridgeway Avenue fire 3 miles away. The fire is extinguished at Ridgeway Avenue, but the firefighters arrive too late to save the lives of two children, Tommy and Santana Jackson. The horror of the Ridgeway Avenue blaze is compounded by the fact that several years before Tommy and Santana Jackson were born, the crew of Engine 85 was the first to fight the devilish fire at Our Lady of the Angels School in 1958. The Chicago Tribune reports State's Attorney Bernard Carey did consider investigating the actions of firemen and policemen during the Ridgeway fire for possible criminal conduct. However, research reveals no such investigation took place. Immediately after the Ridgeway Avenue fire, Judge Heckinger sentences Frank Muscari to 5 months in Cook County Jail for criminal contempt. March the 2nd, 1980. One Chicago police officer rescues a woman from dense smoke after she collapses in her kitchen. Police report the fire had been started by children playing with matches. March the 6th, 1980. 18 striking Chicago firefighters are subpoenaed to appear before the Illinois Cook County Grand Jury, investigating cases of suspected arson in Chicago, possibly instigated by the Chicago Firefighters Union. March the 7th, 1980. One space heater explodes in a basement apartment in Chicago at 6813 South Carpenter Street. One Chicago police squad car races to Carpenter Street to transport 4 children suffering from burns and smoke inhalation to St. Bernard Hospital. 2 of the children die on arrival at the hospital. A 3rd child dies 1 hour after arrival at the hospital. A 4th child dies at Carpenter Street before additional transportation to the hospital can be arranged. The children were Cornell Rush and his 3 sisters, Rondaria, Chicana, and Simone, 1 day away from her birthday. According to records, a fire department ambulance arrives at Carpenter Street 17 minutes after the first alarm sounds. The Chicago Tribune reports the ambulance was tardy. March the 8th, 1980. Just after midnight Saturday, the Chicago Firefighters Union votes unanimously to end its strike. The Reverend Jesse Jackson and several more third parties helped settle the dispute. The strike lasts 21 long days, 3 long weeks. According to reports, fines unpaid owed by striking firefighters totaled about $1 million. The striking firefighters agreed to concessions as part of the accord to end their walkout, including an agreement to work at least one day within a high-risk area. In turn, city officials agreed to place at least 5 firefighters aboard each fire engine or truck, as opposed to just 4 firefighters. Also, city officials agreed to implement a strong affirmative action plan. The cost of the strike for the city of Chicago is estimated at $16 million. Chicago Firefighters Union negotiator J. Dale Berry urges Mayor Byrne to support amnesty for all firefighter strikers. From a telephone inside Cook County Jail, Frank Muscari voices support for amnesty.
None of us are going back to work unless all of us go back. Frank Muscari.
The strikers agree to forfeit pay for the total time they were on strike. In turn, Mayor Byrne offers amnesty to striking firefighters. By the end of 1980, as Firefighters Union representatives meet city officials during arbitration talks to discuss contract issues, Chicago officials indicate they intend to drop all charges against the Firefighters Union and support the release of Union President Frank Muscari from jail. Frank Muscari is free on bond of $100,000, pending an appeal of his 5-month jail sentence. Reports indicate the fire at the Hotel Carlisle was caused by accidental electrical malfunction. According to reports, a total of 24 people, including 13 children, died by fires which occurred during the strike. After the strike ends, the Chicago Tribune proclaims Mayor Byrne appears as the apparent but uneasy victor in a fierce struggle that bloodied all who participated. And the mayor sapped the resolve of the strikers, who became disheartened as the strike stretched on for weeks, and the prospect of empty bank accounts and pantries became grim realities. The remainder of Jane Byrne's term was focused on more controversies related to Chicago public schools, the police, a voter redistricting plan, and public housing. As part of her goal to reform Chicago public housing, Byrne lived 3 weeks within a Chicago poverty-stricken development known as Cabrini Green. Few records are available to indicate what or which non-governmental agencies assisted fire victims during and after the 1980 Chicago firefighters strike. However, it is known Mayor Byrne and the Chicago Sanitation Department combined to contribute $1,200 for the family of Jacqueline Davila, a young girl who died of smoke inhalation December 24, 1980, Christmas Eve, after a fire broke out in her home in Chicago at North Kedzie Boulevard. $1,200 is worth about $4,500 in the year 2024. In 1983, during her re-election campaign, Mayor Byrne was pitted against Illinois Cook County State's Attorney Richard M. Daley and Harold Washington from the U.S. House of Representatives, Illinois 1st District. Washington was elected, and Byrne lost her bid for another term as Chicago mayor. During the immediate aftermath of the strike, many legal experts contend it would be problematic to prove in court as to whether any injury or death could have been avoided if there were no strike. However, by November 1981, attorneys for the Carter, Teague, and Rivard fire victims sue the Chicago Firefighters Union for millions of dollars, claiming the union acted in a manner grossly negligent and inefficient during the firefighter strike. As a matter of sheer fact, for reasons unknown, relatives of the deceased Jackson and Rush children were absent or otherwise uninvolved in the lawsuit against the Chicago Firefighters Union. As such, attorneys for the fire victims faced an uphill court battle immediately after they filed a lawsuit against the Chicago Firefighters Union, because before and during 1981, the Chicago Firefighters Union and other similar voluntary unincorporated associations could not be sued as a matter of common law tradition. Yet by April 6, 1982, the common law tradition becomes slightly ruffled, because then the Chicago Fire Department fires 2 Chicago firefighters, indicted by State's Attorney Bernard Carey, for deliberately setting fire to an abandoned apartment in Chicago at North Kenmore Avenue during the first day of the firefighter strike, February 14, 1980. Judge Adam Stillo sentences the pair to 3 years probation for criminal arson. The Illinois General Assembly changes the state law in 1983 so that the Chicago Firefighters Union and similar associations could be sued in court. By March 1988, after months and years of legal exchanges between the Illinois Cook County Circuit Court, the Illinois Appellate Court, and the Illinois General Assembly, the Illinois Supreme Court rules. The Chicago Firefighters Union and similar associations could be sued only for causes that occurred after 1983, meaning fire victims during the 1980 Chicago firefighter strike were declared ineligible to sue the Chicago Firefighters Union for damages which could have caused death and injury during the strike. By October 1988, the U.S. Supreme Court declines to review the Rivard versus Chicago Firefighters Union case. Years after 1980, several firefighters who went on strike convened for a reunion. Some of the firefighters invite former Mayor Byrne to join their gathering. It does not happen because the former mayor is suffering from a common viral bug. She has the flu. Today, there is a written contract between the Chicago Firefighters Union and the City of Chicago. Definitely, the Illinois Public Labor Relations Act prohibits strikes by public employees whose absence from work would pose a clear and present danger to general public health. Country boys, you want to play street tough? First, read the playbook. It's hard, y'all.